What if Naruto won Sakura's heart? Emotional Story, Part 2. Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A normal day. A.N. Hey everyone. Eva here, typing the chapter for what a girl really wants. XD sorry for not updating, fanfiction has been down lately. Summer is coming to an end and then school will start with the finals and tests. Oh yeah, today I got back my Cat 6 testing results, which is similar to the standardized testing you take every spring. Pout, my sister did better than me. And she is in APAAS, for smart and intelligent people, however you will spell that. My sister Cindy, she is more intelligent and athletic than me. I'll never be the perfect daughter my parents will ever have, because they already have one. Bangs head on keyboard. Oh well, enough of my drama. And don't worry, I'm right now working on the last chapter of Come Come Paradise, and yes there will be a sequel. _, I have received many pleading from no name 7. Hee smile. I hope that you will enjoy this chapter. And also be sure to read my other new fan fiction story, Dangerously 16, please read and review. Reviews can tell me if people are actually reading it and enjoying it. Thanks. Disclaimer. I own the characters that you have never heard of, especially Akihiro. _. A normal day. 10:15 a.m. Sakura groaned as she turned off her alarm clock which was ringing its annoying sound for the past few seconds. Later, the girl got out of her bed and opened the curtains where the bright sunlight entered through the light glass window. In her pale pink nightgown, Sakura went out onto the balcony and her emerald green eyes stared into the beautiful view of Tokyo at its morning's best. Cars were racing down the streets to their destinations while pedestrians walked patiently to the nearest coffeehouse to take their daily dose of fresh brewed coffee, while some school buses drove young children to their schools. Sakura let out a small yawn and then looked at the time. She realized that she had overslept since what had happened last night at the pool. Today was supposed to be another one of those days where she goes and gets photos taken of her in summer wear and designer's clothing. I'm going to take a day off, she said to herself as she went to the restroom to get herself cleaned up for the day. In the restroom, Sakura took off her nightgown and stepped into the shower. She then turned on the warm water and waited for a moment until steam surrounded her body. The pink-haired girl then squeezed some solution from a tube and then scrubbed it all over her wet body. When she decided to rinse her body with the lukewarm water as it sprayed onto her body like a fountain, she closed her eyes as her mind wandered off to a daydream. A half-hour later, she approached her convertible which has been in its comfortable parking space near some shade to prevent any damage from the sunrays beating against its coat. Turning on the ignition, Sakura found herself thinking of the night at the pool. The celebrity shook the thoughts away until it further poisoned her conscience. It was nothing, she thought, and then tried to focus on her fiancé who was supposed to visit her that afternoon, but had to cancel for another photo shooting event. Ever since they had been engaged, they've never had any quality one-on-one encounters with each other excluding the time at the plaza and ice cream stand. Before they were even speaking on marriage terms, they have traveled the world together. With her tour and his schedule, it was not a problem. But now, Sakura didn't know whether Akihiro and she will ever have some time together. Slowly her thoughts then focused on the guy who fought with her last night. Sasuke. He was different than Akihiro. When she had met him the first time, He had this bad boy aura that surrounded him that drew Sakura's attention to him. Sakura then shook the thoughts away and tried to focus on the traffic, and then Sakura almost found herself about to run into a vehicle in front of her. With a sharp halt, Sakura let out a quick gasp as the person in front of her turned around, and those eyes of hers gaped open to see who those black eyes belonged to. Those black onyx eyes. The ones that felt like they were staring at her. Staring at her soul. Sasuke, Sakura whispered as she saw Sasuke motion her to follow him, and without a disapproval, Sakura followed him in her convertible until the two reached into a vacant lot. When Sasuke stopped, he got off his motorcycle and then headed to Sakura's window. I apologize. Sakura pushed a button which then reeled down the window so Sasuke could hear her apology. Much to her surprise, instead of receiving a lecture on how he could have killed her, he just smiled at her and later walked back to his bike. Hey. What was that for? I almost killed you, and you just smile at me and then walk away. Sakura popped her head out of the window and glared at him. Apology accepted. Sasuke rode to Sakura's side flashing her one of his dreamy smiles. And then later, the guy rode away leaving a confused and dazed Sakura alone in her convertible. Hello. Akihiro answered his cellular phone and then smiled when he heard the sweet voice on the other end of the line. Hey baby, are you alright? Your voice is shaky. I don't know whether it's the static or not, but are you alright? He held a hand up in disapproval when an assistant held up a suit for him to wear for the photo shoots. Akihiro put his hand over the mouthpiece and then said, "The blue one is fine, thanks." He then let go of the mouthpiece and then talked into it. Sakura, it's about 3, do you want to come over? Hey, wait. Aren't you supposed to be at the photo shoots too? He went over to the dressing room and then sat in his chair. Why? You never take a day off. Look baby, alright, it's okay, he replied onto the cell phone as he listened to his fiancée. Do you want me to come over? Are you sure? Okay. Well, I have to finish up some touches, alright. Okay. I love you. He then hung up and placed the cell phone onto the counter as he went over to his assistant to receive the blue suit. Sakura sighed as she hung up on her cell phone and then smiled as she smiled at Yuri as she handed her her regular order at Capricciosa. What's wrong? Ever since you entered here, you didn't have a smile on your face, is it Akihiro? Yuri wiped the counter while some of her coworkers made the coffee for their customers. The pink-haired girl took a sip of her coffee and sighed. No. It's Sasuke. When she mentioned the name, Yuri nearly dropped a vase. What? Is something wrong? Sakura looked at Yuri who had an unsteady look on her face. Who's Sasuke? She resumed cleaning the counter and fixed up the menu on Sakura's table which tilted on its one side. The waitress, sapphire blue eyes were full of curiosity when she had heard that name. Oh, this person. Sakura tore off a small piece of the cinnamon roll and plopped it into her mouth. Person. Sakura. What do you think you're doing? Yuri tried to lower her voice so her supervisor can't see her talking in a private conversation with a customer of hers. Nothing happened. Sakura looked up at Yuri who was obviously ticked off. Haruno Sakura, I am utterly disappointed in you. A stern look was spread across her face and Sakura uneasily looked back at her friend. Sakura, I'm your best friend, and I am very disappointed in you. Why didn't you tell me so I could hook up with him? Yuri finished, leaving Sakura sweat dropping. Oh, I didn't know that you were looking for someone. Sakura bit off of her cinnamon roll as Yuri continued to wipe the counter. Isn't the table already polished enough? Sakura looked at the already shiny table while Yuri still wiped the surface. So, is he cute? A smile crept up Yuri's face as her long blonde hair bounced up in curls. You never change, do you, Yuri? Sakura laughed as she drank some of her coffee. You know that I get like this whenever guys are involved. Yuri flushed slightly, so tell me, is he cute? Not as cute as Akihiro, Sakura faithfully answered. Stop being faithful. Fill me in on the juicy details. Is he tall? What is his occupation? Built. Single. Does he like coffee? Yuri later fixed up the menu, which had already been fixed. Yuri, stop that. You've already tidied up the table and the menu. And if you want an honest opinion, fine, he is cute. Sakura heard a satisfied squeal from Yuri as she listened. Is he looking for anyone? Doubt it. Come on. What? You like him? What? You like him? No. I am completely happy with Akihiro. I didn't say that you weren't incomplete with Akihiro. What do you want? The truth. It is the truth. Fine. Just to let you know, you're too stubborn for your own good. With that said, Yuri waved her goodbye as she headed to another table to take their orders. Sakura didn't know what her friend meant, and instead, she shrugged at the comment as she left a tip for Yuri before heading out the door. So how was it? Was it good? Sorry if it was long, hehe. Please review. I love reviews. Be sure to read Dangerously 16 and Come Paradise. I love you all. God bless. Eva, or Ava. Half Full Half Empty Part 1. Sakura stood at the edge of the toilet seat and ran through her hair with her shaking hands. Her once radiant pink hair was now of a tint of her shade, her milky white pale skin was now blotchy pink. The celebrity then rested her head on the cold tiled wall and then slowly closed her eyes to close out the light in the restroom. For a second, she then threw her head in the seat and threw up. She then went over to the sink and flushed her face and mouth. With the water still running, Sakura looked at the mirror which displayed a blurry vision of her reflection. A small tear strolled down her cheek as she slid open the medicine cabinet and took out her toothbrush and toothpaste. She squeezed the paste onto her brush and then brushed her teeth as her emerald green eyes settled onto her reflection. After a few spits and washes, Sakura then went into her room and pulled out some clothes to wear for the day. The pink-haired girl then got dressed and went downstairs to the kitchen to make herself a quick meal. She looked at the message machine and felt disgusted at the number of messages she received. 63 messages. The newest message played. Sakura. Are you there? Baby, I'm so sorry about what had happened, and I know that you're probably sick of my messages, but hear me out. Please. Sakura got her keys with a shaking hand and then went out the door to the driveway. When she got to her car, she got a quick chance to look at her surroundings, as the cool breeze swirled its way past her hair. She got into the vehicle and then turned on the ignition and looked at her rearview mirror. She then turned it off when she saw a mother and child walking together down the street. The little girl resembled a miniature Sakura as she wore her backpack and school uniform as the mother held her hand securely and walked her down the street, passing Sakura. Without a hesitant, Sakura put her keys down and looked at her mirror, another tear streak down. With a shake of her head, she then turned on the ignition ignoring her inner feelings and drove off. Miss Haruno, would you please go to the top and repeat the first 2 verses for us? One of the producers turned up the volume in the screening room and put on his headphones. Okay, Sakura then fumbled her pages back to the beginning and put on her headphones back onto her head and then sang a few verses but then stopped. I'm sorry, could we do this later? I need to clear my head. Sakura left the room without giving her producers and director their consent. Sakura went into the ladies' restroom and then went over to the sinks and turned on the water. She washed her face with cold water a few times and then turned off the faucet and dried her face with some towels. The girl looked at her pale skin and realized that it was more pale than usual. Ignoring it, she then exited the restroom only to run into a familiar face. Sakura. Akihiro ran into Sakura as she was on her way out. Ignoring him, she continued her way to the screening room, but Akihiro stopped her. Sakura, did you get my messages? I called you like millions of times, and I was wondering if you want to get back together with me. Sakura gave him a sympathetic look and shook her head. I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. She then turned around but Akihiro's words stopped her. It's that guy, isn't it? Sakura closed her eyes and then walked away without giving him an answer. It was a bright afternoon and the birds were chirping in the small branches of the trees nearby. A guy was standing near the brick wall of a bar and he lit a cigarette. His dark raven hair shimmered in the light, as his biker wear looked brand new, his dark shades covered his mysterious eyes. Some cute girl passed by him and checked him out, but he ignored them. He had only one girl set on his mind. Just then, a bartender that was a head taller than him called out to him. Hey, there's a phone call for you, Sasuke. He then answered the phone. All right, fine, he then hung up with those words hanging on the line. Sasuke then exited the bar and hopped onto his motorcycle and turned on the ignition and then drove off down the avenue. Sakura set herself down onto a bench in a public park where the trees swayed freely as if dancing with the wind. Children and toddlers of all ages were playing in the playground as their guardians watched them with the eyes of a hawk. The pink-haired girl put on her pink shades and then shakily got out her water bottle and took a few sips right when a little girl, about 7 years old, came up to her with her newest CD in her hand. My mommy and I like you. The little girl flushed in her cheeks as she stood before the celebrity and then handed her the CD. Could you sign, please? Mommy and me will be happy, and I think you are pretty. Touched by her words, Sakura gratefully got out a pen from her purse and signed her autograph for the little child. Flashing a smile, the little girl then ran back to her mom yelling out that she met Sakura. With a gasp, she was then swarmed with children and adults marveled by her presence in such a public place. With the crowd staring some commotion, this then brought in the paparazzi and reporters. Miss Haruno, would you please tell us what you are doing here? Miss Haruno. Please, Miss Haruno, how would you comment on your breakup with Akihiro? Miss Haruno. Is it true that you are seeing this mysterious stranger who had saved you from being mugged? These questions harassed Sakura and as she was trying to get away someone grabbed her by the arm and she disappeared with that person from the crowd. The person put a finger to her mouth to shush her, and Sakura was surprised to see the person. Sasuke. As he let go of his finger and greeted her, what are you doing here? I came to check up on you. Since last night you were hopeless, Sasuke reminded her as they both stood in the shade. Quote. Sakura looked down on the grass. Is something wrong? Sasuke looked down at Sakura who had a depressed look on her face. Sakura looked at him and smiled, and then frowned. Have you ever wondered if life was worth living? Are you being suicidal? Sasuke broke the ice. Just then the reporters found them behind the oak tree and then started for them, but Sasuke quickly ran with Sakura to his bike and then hastily drove off. "My car!" Sakura yelled. Later, Sasuke said among the reporters who were running after them, but some gave up. Rekindling of the heart. Sakura stood out on her balcony and rested her head on her hand as she stared out into the city thinking of what had happened out in the country with Sasuke and her. He seemed so comfortable with her, and she had no idea why. Usually when she is in the presence of her fans, they go all frantic and practically run over her with questions and screams. The pink-haired girl shook her head and laughed at the fact that he had something up his sleeves, to make her so safe with him. Safe. A small breeze wafted through the air, and feeling a bit chilly, Sakura went inside and slid the window closed and grabbed her robe and sat on her comfy bed. Sakura laid her head on her pillow with strands of her pink hair scattered around her face as she stared calmly at the ceiling like she had when she was once a little girl. She turned her head slightly to the right where on the wall was a framed award for her first winning album. Sakura shrugged. The phone rang and Sakura went over slowly to pick up the phone. "Hello. Oh, yes, I understand. Okay. I'll be there in a while. Yes, I know. I need to rest. I know. Don't worry." She smiled over the phone. When she put down the phone, she went to her closet and grabbed a few articles of clothing and then went over to the bathroom. Slowly she took off her nightgown, feeling the soft silk smoothly go down her legs. She then stepped into the shower and turned on the warm water. At first, it was cold, and she shivered and quickly turned the knob to the left for a warmer feeling of the water. When the temperature was just right, Sakura stood there drowning her face in the water, wondering, pondering. After a few seconds she went over to one of the small shelves and got out a soap for her skin. She gave the small bottle a little squeeze and a clear solution spurted out into her small hands. Sakura put the bottle back to its place and then massaged the soap over her body. The feel of the soft little crystals settled in the solution made her body so calm and soothing. When she entered into the ray of water from the shower, the warm water melted away the crystals and Sakura washed her face and massaged the rest of her body. A few minutes later, she turned off the water and slipped herself into a soft towel and dried herself carefully and wrapped herself around the white material and then slowly went over to the mirror and touched her soft complexion. Her face was paler than usual. Shrugging at the thought, Sakura went over and dressed into her day clothes. The phone again. Sakura picked up the phone and knew who was going to call her. "Yes, I'm going to be there. Don't worry, okay, yes, I'm fine." She then hung up on the other line and then went over to her bed. She carefully straightened the blanket and stuffed the pillows into a fashion that she liked. Sakura then headed out the door, but when she had her hand on the doorknob, she stopped and a smile crossed over her face. She turned around and grabbed her purse and keys to the car and then left the building. Putting on her treasured pink shades, she approached her platinum convertible and stepped inside and turned on the ignition. She looked back for some free space and if any cars were in sight. Coast was clear. She then stepped on the gas and the vehicle slowly approached the street and then Sakura steered to the right and straight onto the road ahead of her. The celebrity then stopped at a red light, and then she closed her eyes. After a while when she opened her eyes, it was a green light and then she drove on until she reached a building and then turned into the parking lot. She then got out and grabbed her purse and set her keys into the bag. Sakura headed toward the entrance, but a figure stood ahead of her. It seemed to tower her a head over her own. As she stepped closer, Sakura knew who it was, and she didn't smile to the visitor, or guest, or even stalker. Hello, Sakura. The man took off his hat as if to disguise him, and his raven black hair shone in the broad daylight, and Sakura nodded in return. Oh, come on Sakura, I at least should deserve some decent greeting. He stepped in front of her, blocking her entrance. Please Akihiro, move, she stared into his dark eyes. With a soft face, Akihiro held her by the shoulders and stared into her emerald eyes as if they were precious gems. Sakura, have you gotten my calls? Ignoring his pleas, Sakura moved aside and headed to the entrance, but her ex-boyfriend's words stopped her. Sakura, I couldn't sleep for the past few weeks, I didn't eat, I couldn't think of anything but you, and now I'm on the verge of being fired off of Sephora. Akihiro's body seemed thinner than usual, and his face looked serious. Sadly, Sakura gave in and forgave him. So, does that mean that we're together? Akihiro held her hand. Thinking of Sasuke on the side of her mind, she looked at Akihiro as if he seemed nothing to her but a friend only. However, Akihiro bent down on one knee just as he did at the restaurant a few months ago. He held her hand gently and looked up at Sakura, who knew what he was going to do. He held out a small box, and Sakura let out a surprised gasp, not a gasp like a girl who was about to be proposed, but a how could you gasp? Will you marry me? Again. Akihiro asked, holding the big rock in front of Sakura. The image of Sasuke sort of blurred in Sakura's thoughts, and not aware of her subconscious, she nodded slowly, and Akihiro smiled and embraced her small figure. The two walked together, but Sakura told him to stay outside when she entered into the building. Akihiro insisted, but Sakura told him no, as if afraid to tell him something. With a nod he understood and stood outside waiting for Sakura. And on the other side of the street, in the dark shadows, a motorbike stood at the corner, as the owner calmly stared at what had just happened in front of his own eyes. Tokyo Express. Tokyo's hottest couple had just reunited. Reasons are still unknown, and yet there are still some rumors flying around with Haruno Sakura's latest affair before the tearful reunion with Tokyo's top model Akihiro. More information is to be given. Sakura smirked at the newspaper as she took her morning coffee at Capricciosa, as her friend Yuki, the waitress, was taking orders for this couple across from the celebrities' table. Good morning Tokyo, we have the latest news for the beautiful lights of Tokyo. Our most popular lovers were seen outside of Tokyo Hospital with Akihiro down on his knee with the beautiful young woman's hand in his very own. The anchorwoman was informing the viewers at the coffee shop, and some looked at Sakura wondering if the empty seat in front of her was occupied for her fiancé. It wasn't. Being fed up with the paparazzi flashing pictures of her in front of the clear windows, Sakura got up and told her friend, "You know, you should do something about those windows, it's a lack of privacy." And then, without hearing a response from Yuki, she grabbed her pink purse and headed out with her arm in front of her, blocking the mob of hyperactive photographers trying to flash pictures of her every move. Soon, she reached her platinum convertible and drove off, while some of the committed paparazzi kept on running after her with their huge cameras. As Sakura drove out of the parking lot, she quickly swerved to the right, almost scratching her vehicle, and stepped on the pedal, speeding past the limit. However, police officers knew who she was and let her go because she was Tokyo's lady. Sakura was sick of this. The attention, the bright flashes she sees every time she goes somewhere public just to live her life as a normal person. She is a normal person, however, the media portrays her as an idol. As a former Miss Tokyo, Sakura brushed her tears away from her face and tried to keep her eyes dry and clear so she could see the road better. When she finally reached her apartment, she quickly retreated to her home and shut the door and locked it. Heading up the stairs to her room, Sakura felt a wave of weakness over her, pulling her down to the cold floor. She could barely see and all her eyes could make out was a blur, nothing but a variety of colors of the rainbow all blurred and faded together like an abstract painting. Hoping it would work, Sakura closed her eyes for a while and then opened it again. Her eyesight was back. Sakura timidly walked over to her door and leaned against the hard cold wall as she saw dozens of bouquets of roses placed in front of her door like a memorial service. It was all from Akihiro. Taking the letter tags off, Sakura had someone deliver them to her neighbors as seeing no use of having many vases of flowers in her apartment. Turning on the television, news of her reunion with Akihiro were all over the channels. Frustrated, Sakura let out a grunt and turned off the television. At that moment, she wanted to throw the big object out of her balcony, however lacking the strength prevented her to do such a thing. A few moments later, the phone rang. Sakura didn't pick it up. Instead she headed straight to her bedroom and landed herself onto the soft mattress hoping to doze off blocking everything that's happening in the world and let her off to her own dreams. Out in her driveway, a young man took one last look at the empty balcony and then put his helmet on and drove his motorcycle away. As Sasuke drove off his vehicle, he passed Tokyo Hospital and impulsively took a spit at the sidewalk, probably despising the moment of Akihiro down on one knee. Trying to fight back his emotions, he shrugged them off, hoping that he would never feel them again. Being alone for 19 years of his life and living with his kind neighbors was not the ordinary life or any child that he has ever befriended. His parents had left him not wanting anything to do with him since his mother had an unplanned pregnancy. All he could remember was that his neighbors told him that they had a brief conversation with his mother and Sasuke's foster father told him that he looked exactly like her mother except she had a tired and sorrowful look on her face. Only when he was at the age of 16 Sasuke knew the truth of his identity. And right now at that moment, he didn't know who he was, and what he was. His foster parents were kind to him and raised him well, however, the lack of his real parents being there Sasuke was driven into the underworld of drugs, sex, and violence. His father, Satoshi he would call him, was always off at work and stayed home at rare occasions on the holidays and on the weekends. His mother, Amiko he would call her, worked full-time at the hospital and had little time with Sasuke, and so most of his adolescent years he would live off of crackers, cereal, and candy. Resenting his life, Sasuke, at the age of 15 began to embrace a whole new thing that he knew that neither his parents or foster parents would let him be involved in. A gang. Memories of his so-called friends stung Sasuke in the back of his mind, and he thought to himself every night that he was thankful of getting out of that group alive with some permanent wounds on his back and stomach. Before he left the group, there were times where he would wake up to a different girl every night in his bedroom and would safely bring them home without his parents' notice in the morning. All this time with them, he only thought of them as company when he was feeling down, and pleasure, not love. Love. He often pondered on the meaning of that word. Love. Even the word echoed through his brain. Sasuke would even leave his living room whenever a commercial of any subject on love or even shows that he knew that Amiko would love watching on the weekends would make him sick. Sick to his stomach. Sasuke loved his parents, however the only feelings he had for them were only like, or comfortable with, but not love, with that he would even look at his classmates' parents and how they interact with their children. The parents seemed to have such a big influence and effect on his classmates that he thought about how his foster parents were influencing him. They were kind and gentle, and Satoshi had never laid a hand on him whenever he would come home bleeding or with a bad grade or a detention. Instead, his parents would just nod and continue on with their agenda. Now, he is 19 and grew out of his home. When he graduated from high school, it was a miracle that he actually did. He immediately left home. No goodbyes or kisses or hugs. The last that Sasuke had ever seen them was their faces in the audience as Sasuke walked up to get his diploma. After that, it was all in Sasuke's hands. He used up all of his money that he saved up from childhood and bought a motorcycle, the same one he has now. With that, he drove away from home with nothing but a heart full of painful and a few treasuring memories in him. Ever since he had left home, he went into a convenience store and asked the manager for a job. Luckily, he received the job, and after a few months he had enough money to rent an apartment, a small apartment, not the ones that you usually see now with lots of rooms. Instead, the one that Sasuke settled for was a two-room place where the living room, kitchen, and bedroom was in one room and the restroom in the other. There, he started his life, until now. The secret is out. Are you nervous? Akihiro squeezed her hand as their limousine came to a stopping point. Outside of the vehicle was pouring rain as anxious reporters and cameras waited by for them to appear. Many of them held umbrellas to protect them from the wet rain. I don't know. The paparazzi are going to be busy tonight for sure. Sakura gave a worried laugh. Her fiancé comforted her right when the door was opened as screams and yells greeted the star-studded couple as they were offered umbrellas by the security and took a stroll down the red carpet to another event for Akihiro's Sephora. Ms. Haruno, is it true that you and Mr. Mitsuo are once again engaged? One reporter harassed the two as Sakura felt Akihiro squeeze her hand harder as security tried to help them make it into the building. Mr. Mitsuo, is it true about some allegations against the company that you're working in? One female reporter shouted out. When she asked him that, Sakura was surprised to hear that. Akihiro, what allegations? She asked. However, since the crowd was too loud, Akihiro didn't seem to hear her. Everybody step back behind the black line. Please let Ms. Haruno and Mr. Mitsuo make a safe way to Sephora, and please stay behind the black line. Sir, please stay behind the black line. Questions will be answered once the young man and lady make their way to the building. I repeat, please stay behind the black line or security will be enforced upon you. The security men chanted while some others helped the couple into the building. I know, black line. I'm random, okay. Sorry. As they approached the building, Akihiro and Sakura were led to their seats as the presentation began. When Sakura was seated beside him, she whispered to Akihiro, Akihiro, what about those accusations? What did Sephora do? It's nothing, Sakura. Just some money laundering that has been going around. Akihiro shrugged it off as if it didn't matter to him, which then made Sakura confused. But isn't that your money too? You told me last month that you also sponsored for your company that you work for. Sakura leaned forward. It's really nothing, Sakura. Don't worry. I found a way to get the money back for the company and me as well. Akihiro put his arm around her as the speaker began to speak on the podium on the stage. You're really a curious one, aren't you? Don't worry your little head now, and besides, the presentation has just started. Don't worry, Sephora will come back successful as it always has. He flashed a heart-throbbing smile that Sakura couldn't resist but believed that everything was all right. Rain poured hastily onto the windows as Akihiro and Sakura sat silently in the limousine. What happened at the red carpet kind of startled Sakura for a while. Hey, are you okay? Akihiro kissed her softly on her cheek and held her hand gracefully and set it onto his lap. Yeah, I'm fine, Sakura lied. It certainly is raining hard, now isn't it? Akihiro sighed as the limousine took a swerve to the right heading to Sakura's apartment. It sure is, Sakura smiled thoughtfully. Since it's raining hard, do you want to come by my place? You haven't been there for the whole time we've been together. I can fix us a fire and some hot chocolate in the living room, Akihiro suggested, hoping that she will accept his invitation. Actually, I need to sleep very early tomorrow. I haven't been getting much sleep lately, and I'm quite tired right now. Sakura gave a fake yawn and it sounded real. Believing her, Akihiro nodded and helped her out of the limo, walking her to the door with an umbrella over their heads. Sweet dreams, Sakura, he whispered to her ear when he kissed her on the lips and walked away back into the limousine. As Sakura watched the car drive away, she then opened the door into her home, not knowing that someone was close by watching her every move. Changing into her pajamas, she combed her hair from her fresh warm shower she took when she came back from the event. She later went over to her balcony window and slid it shut and closed the curtains. As she went downstairs to the living room, she heard a ring on the doorbell. Who could be here? It's raining hard, Sakura thought to herself as she opened the door and gaped her eyes wide open when she saw who was outside in the cold rain. Hi, the dark-haired young man greeted her in the cold. Sasuke. A surprised Sakura greeted the mysterious young man as she was on her way outside of her apartment. Her emerald gems looked up and down at him. His clothes were soaking wet and his hair fell down in a sloppy mess. Why don't you come in and warm up? It's raining hard outside and you can get sick if you're out like that for a long time, Sakura worried as she led the visitor into her apartment for the very first time. As he took a few steps forward, the young man looked up and moved his hair back so he could see where he was. Since this was the first time he had ever stepped into a celebrity's pad, he decided to look around. Every step he took, a wet drop fell onto the carpet. Oh, here, let me take your jacket. The pink-haired young woman held his jacket and went to the bathroom to squeeze the water out while Sasuke took off his shoes and gave them to her. Make yourself at home while you're here. There's food in the fridge if you need anything. Her muffled voice was heard behind the closed door as Sasuke walked around. From where he stood there was a kitchen visible at the far right corner where there was a large counter surrounding it with some space for people to come in and out. The tiled kitchen floor was of a pale shade of pink, and when he took a glimpse of the refrigerator, he caught sight of a few magnets with some pictures on them. As he took a closer look, he realized that there was a picture of Sakura and her fiancé, Akihiro. The two seemed inseparable in the picture as Sakura was dressed in her finest black halter gown, for once she wears something other than pink or red, with her hair curled in many crisp curls, while Akihiro was dressed in a manly tuxedo with his arms around her. There was writing on the bottom as if stating the event, "How wonderful life is, now you're in the world." Sasuke then looked down at a whole mini calendar staring back at him. It showed of her daily activities and schedules of next week and possibly next month. Sakura seemed to be the girl who's always on the go. When he turned around, He saw a huge screen television across the room hung on the wall as if it were a masterpiece. There were 3 leather furniture surrounding the area with a coffee table in the middle. Sasuke then noticed that there were stairs by it, leading up to the second floor, her bedroom. Knowing that Sakura needed her privacy, he then settled on the furniture waiting for her to come back. In the restroom, Sakura held the heavy jacket that was drenched in rainwater and squeezed it tight on the tub as water came out and flowed down the drain. When she squeezed again, she felt something was inside of it that was blocking most of the water. Her hands felt through the many pockets and felt something. Touching the item, she pulled it out and a small gasp emerged from her delicate mouth. A vanilla-colored package that was practically damaged from the rain. Sakura turned behind her and saw that the door was closed behind her. She could hear her television being turned on and knew that Sasuke was distracted while the audible sound of the darting rain splashed on a small window nearby in her restroom. "Don't open it, Sakura. Don't even think about it," she whispered to herself as she felt her insides raging to open the simple envelope. She put it back into the pocket and sat down as if nothing happened. A few seconds later, Sakura looked at it again, and again. Sakura gave into her temptation and opened it only to find herself in for a shock. There were pictures. Pictures of her and Sasuke. Pictures of her on his motorcycle. Pictures of her in the countryside. And much to her horror, pictures of her half-naked in the pool where Sasuke and she was about to kiss. Beads of her sweat strolled down from the side of her face as she looked thoroughly through the pictures to see if she was seeing right. She was. Sasuke is a stalker. But how can he be? Who took these photos? Sakura's hands were shaking with fear and astonishment as thoughts of Sasuke, being the friendly person he is, turning into a cold-blooded stalker waiting to kill her. And then, a huge fear fell over her. What if he's waiting to kill me now? Is that why he came here? To kill me? Questions swarmed in her head and she couldn't hold it any longer. Midnight encounter with the devil. Cold water splashed into the deep tub as the drenched jacket began to drown under as Sakura looked through the pictures in her hands once again. She couldn't believe it but calmly just shook the thought away. Having a stalker is just enough. But Sasuke, how could he be stalking her? There is no need because they are already keeping in touch in merely the wrong places and wrong time. Could that be how he was stalking her? Watching her every move, even the thought of Sasuke peering down watching her shower every night sent shivers up to her spine. No, he is not that kind of person, Sakura thought, but what if he was? There was a knock on the door that startled Sakura as she accidentally dropped the pictures into the water. She quickly rummaged through the water trying to save the pictures from getting wet. Sakura paused for a moment. Why was she saving them? Even if she did, it wouldn't do her any good. She stood up and walked up to the door facing down towards the tile floor as Sasuke's voice talked behind the door. Sakura, are you all right? You've been there for quite a while. His warm voice spun around Sakura's mind. The kind and gentle voice that calms her sense down has kept personal pictures of her. That moment, she felt betrayed, and used. Again, the voice was heard again behind the door. Sakura, you there? Sakura, I'm going to come in. A worried tone came from Sasuke as Sakura held her hand on the doorknob and gathered her courage and spoke to him after her shock from finding something about him that she had never known until tonight. No Sasuke, I'm fine, really. I'll be out there in just a minute. Sakura looked behind her and took a glimpse of his jacket and bit her lip. Your jacket still needs some rinsing. I'll hang it out on the balcony later. Just make yourself like home, and I'll be there later, all right. Sakura held herself. On the other side, Sasuke listened and wondered what was keeping her so long. Sakura ran to the tub, going through Sasuke's jacket trying to find something that might explain the pictures. Nothing was found. Frustrated, Sakura held the pictures and put them back into the envelope and placed it into the pocket where she found it. She washed the jacket and rinsed it and placed it outside where it hung out in the balcony. Wiping her face from some small tears, she headed back inside where she found Sasuke making himself comfortable on her favorite couch watching some reality television show. She carefully sat in a chair far from him, watching him as he chomped down on some popcorn he had found on the counter, which was originally for Sakura and the movie she had recently rented that night. Her emerald eyes watched his every move, left and right. Realizing that she was quiet, Sasuke stopped eating and looked at Sakura. He knew that something was wrong but couldn't put his finger on it. "You all right? You seem quiet." But before he could finish, Sakura interrupted him with a trembling voice. "Could you please leave? I would like to be left alone tonight." She looked away from him. Sasuke cleared his throat and set the bowl of popcorn aside and got up and walked toward her. Eyeing her, he was confused and kneeled before her. He heard Sakura hesitate. "Is something wrong?" Sasuke whispered. "Just get away from me." A harsh, cold voice emerged from her mouth. Understanding her in some way, Sasuke made his way toward the balcony and swung his half-dry jacket on his shoulder and headed over to the door. When he opened the door, he took one look at Sakura, who was also looking at him, and then left. When he did, Sakura got up and walked over to where Sasuke had sat and picked up the bowl of popcorn and headed over to the kitchen and threw away the contents, disgusted that his hands had touched it. Sakura threw the bowl away also, and headed upstairs toward her bedroom and shut the door. Small cries were heard behind her bedroom door. Outside of her apartment, Sasuke noticed that the sky had stopped raining. He continued on and approached his motorbike. Putting on his jacket to keep himself from getting a cold, he turned on the ignition and rode away, looking back at Sakura's dimmed-lit bedroom window. He drove down the street and swerved a quick right until he passed a few small buildings and then cruised down a dark, narrow alley and then came to a stop as he entered a vacant parking lot near a convenience store and club. Sasuke saw a vehicle parked a few parking aisles away from the building. Leaving out a sigh, he got off his motorcycle and slowly walked over to the car. Before he reached the black convertible, a young man opened the door and came out. Greeting the air with his long luscious black hair, his clear complexion seemed to give the dark light a gloomy look on his face. "So it seems that you have the courage to come see me." His mahogany eyes took a closer look at Sasuke, who was a little drenched from the recent rain that night. The mysterious young man was dressed in his finest black suit with a cashmere shirt with a red tie to give him a rich, sexy look. Sasuke scoffed at his ridiculous look. What was he dressed for? A modeling show? Sasuke looked at himself and smiled at his own unique look. He was wearing a half-drenched leather jacket alone with some faded jeans and a black shirt. Not that fancy, but not that bad, he smiled. "Do you have it?" The man before him approached closer by a few steps. He held out his long thin arm toward him as if he was expecting Sasuke to give him something. Sasuke walked closer to him and reached for his pocket on his leather jacket and felt nothing. Trying to reassure himself, he looked again, nothing. He checked the other pocket and nothing. He muttered a curse word and looked up at the young man in front of him. He didn't know who he was since the only communication the two men had was over on email and on letters and rarely on the phone. At least once he had heard his voice but thought that his voice was disguised. Tonight, it was the first time Sasuke would see him face to face. Do you have it or not? I do not have time for this. Just give me what I want. The dark young man stepped closer and a dim street light shined on him. Sasuke's eyes gaped open as he found out who the man he was working for. Surprised to see who I really am. He gave out a devious laugh. Now, where are the pictures? It seems to me that I have left them at your fiancé's place, Sasuke told him. And what were you doing there? I told you not to go near her again. As part of your assignment, your only encounter with her is only when. Before he could finish, Sasuke walked up to him until he was a few inches away from the model's so-called beautiful face. Now that I finally know who you are, I have been waiting for this day to see you face to face. As you can see, I have no clue what your motives are, but I thought that you wanted me to just get closer to her and I have all right. I have done my job. This whole thing is over, Sasuke explained. Akihiro looked at him in a mysterious manner and then smiled a laugh. Well, it seems to me that you have deepened your assignment while I was away. Sure, you have gotten closer to her, but I have never expected you to fall in love with her. Look at what she has done to you, you have softened up. I knew I should never have hired you. You were just the pretty boy type that Sakura would fall for, he sighed. I have not fallen in love with her. She and I are just friends. Sasuke was confused at what he had said. What are the pictures for? And who took them anyway? How did I manage to get them? Sasuke asked. Well, where did you receive them? Akihiro responded. While I was at work, I got an envelope addressed to me. And there it was, the pictures of Sakura and me. Did you hire someone to stalk Sakura and me? You are sick. Sasuke darted his words through Akihiro like a knife through his chest. I hired the paparazzi to take pictures of you two together, and it worked so well, Akihiro sighed with relief. What do you mean it worked so well? What were the pictures for? Sasuke asked, and then he knew what the answer was. You are thinking of selling them to the public. Why would you do that? Don't you love Sakura, or is she just a little pawn like me in your own little game? Akihiro ignored him and told him, have you read the headlines of this morning's newspaper? Allegations against Sakura. There were some charges of laundering to some of the members of that company of yours. What about it? Sasuke shrugged it off like it was nothing. Well, pretty boy, I was the one who was taking the money. Now to pay it back, I have to use my dear Sakura to pay the price. Akihiro felt a pang of guilt within him when he said that. Why are you doing this? Don't you love her? You're engaged to her. And wait, the whole engagement thing was also for money, right? I could tell that you never truly loved her. She called off the engagement, but then you were in so need of money that you proposed to her again with the same exact ring she had. How low can you get? His words spat out in disgust of Akihiro. You simply can read other people's minds. Well, an excellent job you have done. Now, I want you to get those pictures back from Sakura's place. Akihiro began walking away. Catching up to him, Sasuke wasn't finished yet. He caught his arm in a tight grip and stopped Akihiro from going. Sakura could have seen them, and what are you going to do about it? Obviously, she is going to find out that you were behind all of this, Sasuke told him. Akihiro ignored him and headed over to the black vehicle and stopped to see Sasuke once again. I have an important meeting I must attend to, and don't worry, pretty boy. If Sakura found out about the pictures, I have it covered for you and her. Don't worry, I've got it all in my head right here. He pointed to his head and then turned on the ignition. Who are you? Sasuke knew who Akihiro was, but he never knew that he was capable of such character. Before Akihiro headed off, he flashed a sly smile and told Sasuke, I am simply the devil. With that said, he drove off into the dark night, which seemed to suit him, leaving Sasuke out in the dust. When the black convertible disappeared from the corner, Sasuke ran over to his motorcycle and cruised away. He had to see Sakura, now. Hey guys, I apologize for the 3-month delay. I've been having PSAT classes and testing here in California. Anyway, how are you doing? I hope your school year has been great. For me, well, being a sophomore isn't that bad. Do you want to know what really stinks? The person that you like, they're dating someone else and that person is a very snobby person and you have no idea what that person sees in them. Interesting, isn't it? Note: I don't know how these communities work, but I set up one. Feel free to join, just tell me okay. Thanks. Disclaimer: I do not own Naruto or any of its characters except for the ones that you have never heard of until now in my stories. Includes the hot yet evil Akihiro. Does anyone want him? He's up for grabs. Metalic Gal. Hello, thanks. I'm glad that you like my story. Live, love, laugh. I'm glad that you like it. I will update Hehe. Kai013. I updated yay. Wolf Princess of Paradise. I know. Akihiro can be very evil, and yes, he did use Sasuke for all of his evil deeds. In the previous chapters, when you see Sasuke getting phone calls, it is Akihiro who called. Don't worry, Aya-chan, I forgive you, hehe. Bebopin' Dreamer. Don't worry, when I review, I get lazy too and not want to sign in. SWT Angel Bobby 3. Yes, Akihiro is the evil one. Reika. Don't worry, Sakura will find out, but there will be a twist. Blackened Dove. Hello there. Anima Vivers, formerly OO Shorteu. Yes, I haven't been receiving any aims from you, hehe. Anyway, I hope that your summer has been quite productive, right? Well, thank you for reviewing all of my stories, I greatly appreciate it. XX Sock XX. Yes, I have kept my duty, I updated a new chapter. Icy Lullaby. Thanks, I am really glad you like it. Benjam. I updated, don't worry. Well, thank you all that have reviewed, especially those of you who are anonymous reviewers. I still respect you all too. Title: Too Late to Cry. Sasuke jumped onto his motorcycle and turned on the ignition, snapping his wrist back and forth on the handles. In a few seconds, he cruised down the street with his long raven black hair streaming back in the icy cool air. Sakura was in her room wiping her tears off of her pale face. She sniffed back a few tears and turned to her pillow to look for a tissue box. Not seeing one in sight, Sakura pulled up her tank top from the bottom and wiped off the remaining warm tears that were clogging up in her face. How could you be so naive? Sakura scolded herself for being so gullible. Of course, he's good looking and a decent guy, but you, Sakura, why did you fall for him? Sakura talked to herself as she threw her blanket furiously onto her bed and stormed outside of her bedroom and reached the staircase that led to the living room. Before she reached the bottom of the stairs, she stopped dead in her tracks. Me. I fell for him. No way. There is no possibility that I, Sakura, could actually fall for him. Sakura tried to reassure herself that she wasn't falling in love. Holding her face with her hands, she shook her head in dismay. I can't believe that I fell hard, she confessed in a quiet whisper. He was almost there, just a few more streets until he reached Sakura's apartment. Sasuke stopped at a red light, and realized that there were no vehicles at sight. He took a deep breath and then cruised down the empty street at the red light. A smile crept up from his face. I guess the police are off duty. He turned his head behind and saw the red light turn green, but there were no cars in sight. Turning his head back, his eyes gaped open. Oh shit. He immediately pressed on the brakes and someone screamed in the dark street. So what if I fell for him? Sakura, get a hold of yourself, you are getting married. Akihiro is so much better off with you than him. Just forget about Sasuke. He's nothing but trouble and you proved it tonight. He is stalking you for goodness sake. Pictures of you. Just stop it. Sakura, stop it. Sakura tried to snap her thoughts away. She made her way down to the bottom of the stairs and then arrived into the living room. Sakura noticed that she did not close the windows all the way down. She made her way there and before she closed the windows, she heard some police sirens. There has been an accident. Again. How many car accidents does our city have to have these days? Sakura rolled her eyes as she shut the window closed. Taking a few paces ahead, she headed to the couch to pick up the remote control but then stopped to see something near the door. Curious, Sakura slowly paced to the door and let out a disapproving scoff. The small manila envelope was near the door, on the floor. Forgot to bring it with you, Sasuke? She asked to herself and then bent down to pick up the envelope. As she held it in her hands, she had a deep desire to just burn all of the pictures. The fireplace was nearby, and she could just fling it into the fire. It was easy. A smile appeared on her face and Sakura headed over to the kitchen and made a phone call. Hey, could you stop over for something? I want you to do me a favor. Thanks. Sakura hung up the phone and then looked up. I'm not as dumb as you think, Sasuke. Sakura then headed to the living room and then realized that the sirens were still audible in the living room. That's weird. Accidents like these don't last for more than 15 minutes. Sakura took a few steps forward and then heard the doorbell ring. Shit. Oh shit. Sasuke got off of his motorcycle and ran to the hurt person he accidentally hit. It was an old lady old enough to be his mother. Are you all right, ma'am? Ma'am, are you all right? The old lady began to stir in his arms as police officers came over. Sir, what seems to be the problem here? One of them held out a flashlight at Sasuke. I don't know. I was on my bike and then well I couldn't see in the dark and this old lady was on the road crossing and I didn't see her, Sasuke explained to the officers. Well sir, if you would please stand over here and let us check you, the other officer instructed him. When was the last time you drank for the past 24 hours? One of the officers examined his eyes and told him to walk in a straight line. Passing the test, Sasuke was let go. Sakura smiled at her guest. I expect you to come around for the next week's right. Thank you, bye. Sakura closed the door and realized that the sirens have stopped. Goodbye the end.